back to another episode of Planet Hunters Coffee Chat. I'm your host, Cassie Prolongo, and of course, joining me as always, Nora Eisner. Hey, Nora, Happy New Year!
Hi, Cassie. Happy New Year.
Oh my gosh, it seems like forever since I've seen you. Maybe it has because we're in a new year now. Science never stops. Did you
Oh,
see the
yeah.
launch of the James Webb telescope, space
I did.
telescope?
It was so exciting.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm just really happy that everything is going so well. So I guess you watched it as well.
I did. And as everyone was looking at it, it was like, okay, how many points of failure? But it all went off the hitch. It's looking really good so far. So yay for science, yay for all these cool things that we're going to get hopefully over the summer. So I hope you guys were able to watch it. If not, I'm sure you can find something on YouTube because
Yeah.
it's been recorded everywhere. But for today, our episode, Nora had a great idea. In fact, she's been looking at the forums more than myself, and we've been having people asking about some interesting things. So we're going to talk a little bit about exo.MAST today. So we've talked a little bit about exo and MAST, but exo.MAST has combined both of these a little bit. Maybe, Nora, if you could explain a little bit about what exo.MAST is and why you would want to use it as a citizen scientist and perhaps as an astronomer as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It gets very confusing with all these names that are quite similar. So exoMAST is a database that contains all known exoplanets or confirmed exoplanets and planet candidates. So that is different to exoFOP. So exoFOP, which we have a video on, we've already talked about a little bit. exoFOP lists all stars that were ever observed by TESS. So that is stars, regardless of whether they have a planet around them, they all have an entry on exoFOP. So a lot of those won't have any planets around them, but exoMAST only lists the ones that already have a planet candidate or a confirmed planet around them. So that's kind of the main difference around them. And I guess it's exoMAST because it has a lot of the same information that MAST has. It has the data available, it has the reports. All of this information is hosted by the MAST archives. So exoMAST kind of combines those two things together and has all that information in one place.
Perfect.
But I think the best way to look at it is just to go to the website, and I will show you exactly what I mean. Screen share.
And we were taking a look at it. I mean, it looks very user friendly. I mean, it's not something where, I mean, there's quite a lot of information, of course, as always, with a lot of these things and the reports, but we're going to go through it systematically. And it looks very user friendly to me, how it's set up.
Yeah, it is very user friendly. I think it's definitely very easy to use, and well, let's try it. So exoMAST, it's spelled exo.mast, as you can see up here in the URL. It's exo.mast.stsci.edu, and we'll post that link in the description of the video. But you kind of get to the screen and it lets you enter the name of a planet or object, or they call it object of interest, or TESS TCE. So a TESS TCE is a TESS threshold crossing event. So that's anything that was flagged by the automated pipeline as potentially having a planet candidate around that star. So this is a great tool that I like to use to see whether a particular candidate that I might be looking at has already been flagged by the automated pipeline. And the way to check whether that is the case is simply by entering the tick number. So tick, we will start with, it gives you a list already, but we will start with one that we know and love so well, 555-255-72, which of course was flagged as a TCE because it does have periodic signals in it. And we can look, you get multiple options for the same candidate. And the difference between these is that they cover different sectors. So this is sector 1 to 9, 1 to 13, 1 to 36, and 1 to 39. So it makes sense to, and sorry, I should mention, and right at the bottom here, you've got the confirmed planet. So if there's a letter after that number, after any number, that means that it has been confirmed. Whereas if there is no letter, then it hasn't been confirmed. So for now, let's start off with the TCE one. We can click on that and search. And
Great.
we'll just let that load.
So we've got like the radius and stuff about the star on that. We did cover that in some other videos too. If people want to, we can link to it. Want to take a look at that. But yeah, Nora. So what are the main things that you would look at and maybe would be helpful for citizen scientists to go through?
Yeah. So the main things that I think are useful on this page that we're on right now is kind of the information about the star. And I guess about the planetary system. And this, as you said, we've already covered in other videos because all of this information is exactly the same as the kind of information we'd have on exoFOP. And the numbers should be exactly the same. So the most important ones, just very briefly, that I would look at for the star are the radius of the star, the brightness of the star, which is the V magnitude. I think that's it. Those are the two, and I guess their coordinates, so where it is located in the sky, in case I want to follow it up. And then for the planetary system, again, we like to know the size of it. This is in RP in Jupiter radii. So this is how the size of the system compares to the size of Jupiter in our own solar system. And I guess the period is also one of the ones that I would always look for. So yeah, so as I said, all of this information would also be on exofop. So I wouldn't use exoMAST to get this type of information. I would always use exofop. Getting confused between all these exofops and masts. But instead, what I think is really useful from this page is if we go to light curve, and this needs to load. Instead, I already have a preloaded one over here, so we will just hop over there. It's exactly the same page. Nope, it's not preloaded. I lied. We'll let that load.
It is loading though.
It is. So what we're about to see on this page is we're about to see a phase folded light curve of this candidate. So it's not just the light curve where we'd see lots of different dips at different times. It would be all those dips already folded on top of one another to build up that signal and let us see that transit event in a little bit more detail. And apparently my internet is very slow today, so we'll just twiddle our thumbs. Okay, great. So it has now loaded, which is very exciting. So what's really cool about this is that you can interact with this light curve. So again, this is a phase folded light curve. So all of the kind of transit events are on top of one another. And we can see that even better if we click on this zooming tool over here. We can draw a box over what we want to look at.
Oh, very cool. There it is.
Yes, and you see that beautiful transit. And what's also really important is just underneath here, you see the odd and the even transits. So that means you see every other transit. So if you number all the transits from 1 to however many there are, we'll call it 20. Here you would have all of the even numbers folded on top of one another, and over here you'd have all the odd numbers folded on top of one another. And the reason why this is really important is that because for an eclipsing binary, so if you have two stars orbiting around one another as opposed to a planet orbiting around a star, you would expect the odd and the even transits to have different transit depths. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So this is very important because we want to make sure that those are exactly the same depth, which in this case, we can say that they are, which is good because this is a confirmed planet.
Yes, that would be very good. Otherwise. Okay, so the very top, okay, get it, the folded, the even, the odd on the bottom. You can view that by scrolling into it. Would you also look at like the view documentation, or does this okay, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to that next. That is probably the most useful part of exoMAST that I like to use. If you go under related links to any of these entries, so the related links are really important. I think this is really useful that exoMAST is hosting these. And the reason why that's really useful is because if we have a planet candidate that hasn't been confirmed yet, we can click on these vetting summary reports, or TCE reports as they're often called. So if we click on that, it gets downloaded and we can click on that. And it opens a report that the automated detection algorithm pipeline made for us. And this is kind of why it was flagged. It's telling us why this candidate was flagged by the automated pipeline. All right, there is quite a lot of information on here.
There is, and it would be good to zoom in when you're looking at each set. Oh, there we go. That's so much better. Whoa. Yeah. Okay, there's a lot going on here. This is exciting.
Yeah, so at the top, we have kind of standard information. We have information about the candidate. We have the tick ID. Candidate 1 of 1 tells us that there is only one planet candidate in this. If there were multiple, it'd be 1 of 2 or 3 or whatever. We have the orbital period, always useful to know, and it's telling us that it is a TOI. So it has been promoted to that test object of interest stage. And in fact, we already know for this one, it's also a confirmed planet. But for a lot of these candidates, that would not be the case.
Right.
All right. So then in the first one, we have a not phase folded light curve. This is just the pure light curve. The reason why it's looking quite messy is because it's a lot of data spanning a lot of time. And all of those green lines are showing us times of momentum dumps. So we talked a little bit about those in previous videos. Momentum dumps are when this kind of satellite is a little bit unstable. So if all of our kind of transit events fall on momentum dumps, we have to be a little bit careful. Of course, in this report here, it's quite difficult to see that. So if you think back, when we looked at that candidate, we can also look at shorter time periods. We can look at only 3 sectors or only 1 sector. And those would have reports for just however many sectors you choose that report to be for. So because we chose it for all, which wasn't maybe the smartest choice, we're now seeing a really long lie curve with lots of information on it. Yeah. But anyway, each one of these blue kind of triangles at the bottom, they show us the times of the transits. Of course, you'll see that some of those fall on times when there is no data. The planet would still be transiting at that point. We just didn't see it because we have no data at that point. But those are still marked on there. Right. All right. Then down here, we have the phase folder lie curve, always very useful to look at. We want to look at this to make sure that the shape is correct, that everything looks good and the way that we want it to look. Again, we have that odd and even transit comparison. Sorry, I should also say all of these tests, these are tests that have been run, and these are all used to determine, that have been used by the pipeline to determine whether the candidate could be real or not. And you can see a summary that we'll get to in just a moment at the bottom here. All right, this is one that we haven't talked about too much or at all. This is this is the area around our candidate. Our candidate is indicated by this cross here, shown in pink, as we can zoom in a little bit more. And you can see all of the nearby stars shown in blue around it. Now, this test will tell us what this thinks is the most likely star that is causing this signal. So it highlights that star in red. And if that star is close, or the closest one to that cross, that's good. That means it thinks that this is where the target is. This is where it thinks that that transit is occurring. It's not happening outside of this blue circle. That would be worrying. So it is probably, or in this case, definitely on target. So this blue circle is kind of the confusion radius. So anything within that blue circle is very difficult to determine whether it's on target or not. But yeah, so this is absolutely on target. But if often you will see that it's one of those other stars that are really far away, have been highlighted in red, and that would mean that it is definitely a background eclipsing binary.
So that's incredible. So that actually, this is an automated thing. And obviously this is a confirmed planet because this is your favorite tick ID, which at some point you're going to get a tattoo of on your wrist or something, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But so if it's a planet candidate, but it's not confirmed like this is, would it still show up as red as a potential?
So exo.MAST hosts anything that's a TCE. So that's a threshold crossing event. Often turn out to be false positives. So a TCE is anything that was flagged by the automated pipeline, but the automated pipeline flags anything that has a periodic signal within it. So I will show you in just a moment with a different example what that means, but you have to bear in mind a lot of these are false positives, and this is why it's so important to look at these reports. And in this case, in this example here, it is not a false positive, but I will show you an example of a false positive and how you can determine those. But if one of those stars kind of on the outside there were red, that would be a false positive, and you can rule out immediately and say, not a planet. But it would still be on exo.MAST because it was flagged by the automated pipeline.
Right. Oh, this is really powerful. Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so what's really great is that you have this kind of summary at the bottom here. So DV fit results and DV diagnostic results. So it gives you best estimates for the period, the time of the first transit, known as the epoch, all these other parameters. You have the radius of the planet. So all of these are numbers that you should check. So if maybe not the period, but if, for example, if the RP, so radius of the planet in Earth radii, is really large, I would say if it's larger than about 20 or 25 Earth radii, that's definitely not a planet. But if it is very large, then this would be highlighted in red. So all tests that have been failed are highlighted in red in these summary reports. So the fact that everything on here is shown in black is great news. And exactly what we would expect to see for a candidate like this one. Right. So I'm talking a lot about these kind of these tests. So let's show an example of where it would have failed these tests. And we will go to, this is just one that I've already preloaded. So this is, I should say this is now a TOI. This is flagged on Planet Hunter's tests. It this is just for one sector, is only observed in one sector, and it's a single transit event. So let's go to, this is what it looks like. You can see it here. And what you can see immediately here is that it flagged two events. It flagged two events, but the second event that it flagged is just flat light curve.
There's nothing.
So, yeah, so it flagged kind of two events. Only one of them was actually a dip. So if we go to the related links and look at this kind of summary report of it, we will be able to see that in the summary report. So we can see it flagged this event over here, and it also flagged just a tiny little maybe dip, probably systematic, on the left there. Now, the reason why it's so powerful to look at these reports is because you get a fit for this model. So if you only look at the numbers over here, you would think that the radius of this planet is 7.16 Earth radius.
Yeah.
But if we look at this figure here, the red line is the fit, but it phase folded those two events on top of one another. And one of them is kind of one of those dips that isn't a dip, it's just flat data up here, and the other one is actually the transit event. So because it folded those two kind of events on top of one another, the thing that it then modeled was the average of those two, which turned out to be not the event at all.
Okay.
So
wow.
You have to be very careful. Obviously, it failed this test because the odd and even were different, but one of them was just simply not an event at all. It just forced it to be an event because that's what the algorithm is trained to do, or kind of programmed to do. That being said, it passes all of the other tests, but because it failed these couple of tests, the algorithm then, the automated pipeline, didn't promote this to become a test object of interest. But once you look at the vetting report and you look at this, and we found it on Planet Hunter's tests, you can see that actually this should be a good planet candidate. The vetting report was just slightly off. That's why it's so important to have human eyes also look at these.
Yes, so this is why we still need citizen scientists to continue working on these things. But this is really powerful information, like having this and looking at and confirming and seeing why it did, or it passed, or it failed. That's, yeah, I would see why this would be really powerful to use in your day to day as you're looking at stuff too.
Oh, definitely. So I think we should also very quickly look at a candidate that is absolutely, definitely not a planet candidate. So this is gonna have to load again. This is a triple star system. It was flagged as a test object. Sorry, it was flagged as a threshold crossing event, as a TCE, because it does have a periodic signal within the light curve. But you can already see the shape is all wrong, the odd and even transits are wrong. So let's have a look at that report, because it does still have one of those reports. So this is an example of where you can see where a lot of the tests should have failed. You can see some of them did, some of them are shown in red, but more of the tests should have failed. This transit fit that we see here is simply, again, not correct. You see the odd and the even, again, isn't correct. Those lines should be at the bottom of the events, and they're not. But yeah, so this is an example of where it was flagged as a threshold crossing event, but this is why we have to look at them, because as soon as we look at this by eye, as opposed to with the computer algorithm, we can see that this is not a planet candidate for a large number of reasons. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the most, at least what I find the most useful thing about exoMAST is these vetting summaries. We've only talked about the vetting summary. There are also full vetting reports, but we should do an entire different episode on those because they are very long and there is a lot of information to unpack on those. But when I do look at a candidate, I always, if there is a TCE vetting summary or vetting report for it, I would always look at those first to find out why it was flagged and why it was not promoted to the test object of interest, or the TOI status. So yeah, I would advise you to do that too.
Perfect. Well, all right. Well, thank you again, Nora, for showing us this awesome, another resource for you guys to use, exoMAST. Of course, you already know that you have exoFOP and you have MAST, and now you have exoMAST to look at. So as always, you can send us in your questions, comments on YouTube, on Twitter, email us, however you want to get in touch. We do look at it. Oh, and of course on the forums too, with Planet Hunter's tests. We always do look at it and we take it very seriously. We love to have you guys engaged. So shout out to everyone who's taken a look at our videos and giving us suggestions. It's really what makes us excited to do these episodes. So we'll be back again. We are back now for 2022, so we'll be back in the coming weeks. Good to see you, and great to see you, Nora, and we will talk more about science in our next episode.
Oh, it's great to see you too, and everyone. And yeah, see you again next week.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.